Hello and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley. Thanks for being here tonight. Tonight we've got a shorter stream. I'll be back on webcam probably tomorrow. This one's going to be pretty quick here. We had the Chinese ambassador to Grenada, of course, Communist China's ambassador to Grenada, tweet out something today that I think we should take a look at. And there was a random user who responded to him over on Twitter. But I think it's worth taking a look at, because what we're about to see here, well, you could say it's just one person or whatever with insane views sympathizing with a communist. Well, we're gonna look at something in the actual in the actual screenshots here that, kind of speaks to a broader problem we have in society right now. So take a look at the first set of tweets. This was tweeted earlier today. That's Zhao Yongchen. He's the ambassador from Communist China to Grenada. He tweets, "In Europe and America, the birth rate of whites has fallen very seriously. Is this the result of the genocide policy pursued by their leaders?" Okay, so there we go. It's basically nose picker Nick Fuentes, Nazbol Nick Fuentes level. We've got Andrew Anglin here, cringe going on here. The idea that Western leaders are basically paid off by Jews to I guess slow birth rates or whatever. Anyway, continues. The Uyghur population in Xinjiang has exploded, but the Chinese government has been accused of committing genocide by conspirators. Nonsense. Or actually, he says no sense. Okay, classic. Anyway, it's been pointed out, of course, in the replies, there were 1,000 retweets. Some of those were quote tweets that people clarified what's the actual fact of the matter here. Yeah, so you can have a population increase, but still deprive people of their rights. So nobody's claiming that Communist China is administering death camps. Let's just be clear. Nobody's claiming that they're administering death camps in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs. What they're doing is they're administering a gulag system in which they are subjecting the Uyghur population to forced labor, obviously forced detention, and forced what they call re-education. In other words, indoctrination into communism to destroy their culture, right? Classic genocide, right? I mean, it meets the criteria of genocide. Genocide doesn't even necessarily mean you just kill the entire group or whatever. But furthermore here, to say, oh, we're not running death camps, we're just running concentration camps that are gulags with forced labor, bro. Pathetic. This is their ambassador to Grenada. This is one of the faces of the regime, and he's tweeting this. Just a thug for the bureaucrats in Beijing. Unbelievably disgusting. But what I want to take note of here is that, and I said this a little bit ago, you don't have to just kill everybody for it to be a problem. What, we're supposed to be okay with gulags? Because, oh, it's okay, bro, their population is actually increasing. So what? They're in gulags. That's ridiculous. But the focus of tonight's stream isn't on what Zhao Yongchen said, as disgusting as it was. Because we would expect nothing less from a frontman for the regime in Communist China, a regime that's killed 100 million of their own people, a regime which has been propping up North Korea since they crossed the Yalu River to defend the comrades in the Korean War all those decades ago. A regime which has brought about the communist virus, COVID-19, that's gone on to kill over 1 million people, over 200,000 Americans. Again, they've killed 100 million of their own people. They don't care that 200,000 Americans are dead. They're not even sad about it. They're happy. They're laughing to the bank because we in the West are dumb enough to blame Donald Trump when it was their fault. So we're not surprised that Dr. Zhao here is going to is going to make apologetics for his bosses in Beijing, right? We're not surprised by that. It makes all the sense in the world, right? He serves the leaders. He dusts the portraits. That's what he does. He's a portrait duster. This guy down below, however, is actually what I'm going to focus on tonight. And you say it's a random Twitter user or whatever. Yeah, well, that's kind of the point. This is something that goes to a broader problem in our society right now. The fifth column. Kimran Cherubi tweets in response, "Please liberate us." So this guy almost certainly lives in the West. I mean, if he lived in China, he wouldn't be saying that because he'd be liberated by the People's Liberation Army already, right? No, this guy lives in the West. This guy lives with us. This guy lives amongst us. Now, I don't know which country this guy lives in. I don't know what state. I don't know what province. But I can tell you, he lives here. He lives here. And he's rooting for the enemy. He's rooting for an enemy that at the same time that they're enabling the massive nuclear crisis in Korea, the same time that they're conducting this widespread mass gulag incarceration of the Uyghur population in Xinjiang, the same time that they're an absolute menace to their own population, disappear people in the night, the same time that they are responsible for the communist virus, which has killed so many of us and upended our way of life for the whole year at this point. We must also remember they're aiming 300 nukes at us right now. And this guy says, please liberate us. They're communists. Please liberate us. So now I want to go to what yours truly here tweeted in response to him. We'll bring that up. Again, thanks for being here tonight. You're watching Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley. And we're calling out and dunking on some fifth column seditious losers. So what did I tweet out? I said, in response to this loser, I said, you used to go to the gallows for open sedition like this. What's more disturbing is this guy has 200 plus likes to beg to be invaded by commies. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the face of the fifth columns. Stay vigilant. We have communist sympathizers amongst us. Know your enemy. And I stand by that. 100% I stand by that. And a couple of my friends were making the point, like, where's Joe McCarthy when you need him, right? I mean, he was a national treasure, more than just a national treasure to America. He was a treasure to the West. We need another round of investigations into anti-American activities, right? We should be doing this in every Western country. We should be examining those that sympathize with the enemy right now. This idea that somehow Communist China is our friend, that we should be praiseful of Communist China, that we should be admirous of Communist China, like the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, or like a lot of the quote-unquote journalists at the New York Times. No, we should treat them the same way that we treated the Soviet Union in the 50s. We should recognize that they intend to bury us, and we should understand that we should not try to cozy and cuddle up to those who have every intention of putting us 6 feet under. They are the enemy, right? That's not up for debate. That's not up for debate. Anybody who can't tell that we're in a Cold War with Communist China is a total fool. And some of us are blinded by greed. The corporate status quo, the neoliberal status quo, seeks to maximize free trade and get that sweatshop labor going and just outsource all of our jobs over there so that they can lower their labor costs, right? And have cheap stuff made over there in Shenzhen, in Shanghai, in Guangdong, etc., right? And to hell with values and to hell with principles, because we got to make a quick buck, bro. I'll take a slightly lower labor cost rather than being a patriot, bro. That kind of thing. So some of us are blinded by greed. Those are mostly what people think of as like the establishment, the corporate elites, those kinds of people. But some of us are also deluded by this idea that, well, you know, communist China, they were a useful ally against the Soviets during the last Cold War. And so therefore they're still on our side. No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. The second the Soviets fell apart, we should have aimed everything at communist China and said, okay, you guys are next on the chopping block. You can either play ball or we're going to treat you the same way we treated the Soviets. We're going to, target all your cities, all your bases, all your ports. And if you screw around, you're on notice. This isn't going to work out well for you. And no, we're not going to go $5 trillion into debt to you. We didn't do it to the Soviets. We're not doing it to you. Oh, but apparently, Chinese debt. Amazing. Imagine being that far indebted to the Soviets during the Cold War. It's very possible the Soviets would have won. I mean, the Soviets came close as it was, especially in the early to mid portions of the Cold War. I think it's ridiculous. But then both of those camps, I said, we're blinded. They're misguided. They're blinded by greed. They're ignorant of the reality. They don't really understand the ramifications of what's at stake. This guy here, this Cameron person, he understands what's going on. He chooses to side with them. He knows that we're in a Cold War. And he says, please liberate us. Please liberate us. What does that even mean? Think about it. I'm just going to assume you're in America, but he could be in the United Kingdom. He could be in France. He could be in Canada. What would Chinese quote-unquote liberation of these countries look like? Well, it would necessarily entail a nuclear exchange for one. So a lot of the major cities would be gone, presumably. Now, I think that you could definitely take out a lot of them before they get anywhere near your cities. I think their nukes are made in China, right? Their missiles are made in China. I'm not going to trust the reliability of their engineering that well. Some of them won't even get off the ground. They won't even get out of the silos, right? Some of them will, and some of them will get through, and you will lose some cities in a nuclear exchange with China. Now, China's not liberating us if that happens. Just understand something, Cameron. Here's the deal. If they try, they lose everything. We blast Shanghai, we blast Hong Kong, we blast Beijing and all their military bases. Everything goes up in thermonuclear fire, right? They're not making it out alive if they try that. We would survive that. We'd lose some cities, but for the most part, we would win. Like, it would be a 100% victory for America and for the West. We'd take some casualties. We'd have like maybe 15, 20 million casualties here. They'd have a hell of a lot more over there, and they would lose. So nobody's coming to liberate you. But let's imagine for a moment that it was even, that the Chinese did have parity or something, and they could actually pull it off. I want you to understand something. We can't tell from this whether this guy here is far right or far left. I have my suspicions that this guy's actually far right. But for all we know, he's a far left communist sympathizer that stands in solidarity with the comrades in Beijing. But he could also be one of those like old school Lawrence Southern type people who says, my birth rates and stuff and everything, please liberate us because we want more white babies, that kind of idea, which is hilarious because this is a regime. Communist China is a regime that does forced abortions. They do forced abortions. They are a racially chauvinist society. if we became a colony of communist China, I want you to understand something. We would get the same treatment that the Uyghurs get. Because in communist China, Han Chinese are the supreme race, basically. They're not really fans of the whites or the Uyghurs, that kind of thing, right? We would be second-class citizens, to say the least, because of course, even the Han Chinese are second-class citizens because there are no first-class citizens in communism. Everybody gets purged. Everybody lives in terror. Everybody has no rights, right? Unless you're the great leader. I believe that this guy's alt-right. I believe that this guy's far-right. I believe that this is the kind of guy who probably watches, Jared Taylor, David Duke, Red Ice Radio, unironically. And now I want you to think about something here. I want you to understand something. The argument to be made for increasing birth rates, I've talked about it before on this channel. I made a video about how in this day and age, birth rates are overrated, how it's technology that by and large wins wars, it's innovation that wins wars. But let's say you want to make the case to me that birth rates are an important factor in winning a war. Okay, we can have a debate about that, but let's just assume that you're right now. And we say, the higher the birth rates, the stronger the nation. Let's just assume that. Let's just give them that for a minute here. And just follow me with a little thought experiment right now. So we need to get our birth rates up so that we can be a stronger nation, right? A stronger nation would be better able to fight off the communists, right? The point of having a stronger nation would be so that we can assert our sovereignty, so that we can expand our interests in the world, so that we can become superpowers, hegemons of the West, right? That we can take over the world, that we can forge the world into our image, that we can essentially do what Queen Victoria and Napoleon and all those guys set out to do, and actually make the world, ours, right? That would be the idea of having the high birth rates, is so that, again, we're assuming here, we're just saying, the higher the birth rates, the stronger the nation, the stronger the army, that kind of thing. The idea is we want then to get high birth rates so that we can fight our enemies, so that we can defend ourselves and we can take over the world, right? That kind of idea. What then is the point in increasing our birth rates, though, if we become communists to do it? Like, isn't the whole point of increasing the birth rate supposed to be to strengthen our nation? But if we literally surrender to the communists and we become part of communist China, what then is even the point? We're not sovereign. We're not free. Everything that we hold dear is over. Our way of life is forever overturned. What would even be the point of trying to even become strong at that point? Because at that point, we aren't our own nation. We are part of their nation. And specifically, we're a colony then of communist China. And we're under the heel of a racially chauvinist, Han-centric communist government in Beijing. What then would be the point in having more white babies if we're living under communism? This is something I want you to understand here, that the alt-right and the far right and these white supremacist type right-wingers are so deluded about, and we can see it in the Nick Fuentes clip, for example, that I'm going to play for you very shortly, that they are so obsessed with more white babies that all of the pretenses, all of the reasoning for increasing the birth rates that one might traditionally give don't even matter. Because this guy can't say he wants us to have more babies so that we can be a stronger nation, because he wants us to just preemptively surrender to the communists. He doesn't care about us being strong. He wants us to be weak. He wants us to be subjugated. He wants us to be a colony. of a communist entity trying to take over the world. But he gets his white babies. Again, what would even be the point if we're living under communism? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? No, I want you guys to understand something. He only cares about just more white babies. He's literally willing to live under communism so that he can have more white babies than he is to live free and have, slightly lower birth rates or whatever. Nick Fuentes has had the same attitude. He literally said, and I quote, "I would any day rather have full communism than what we're doing now." And he went on to say basically that he'd take Joseph Stalin over Donald Trump. Joseph Stalin over any of the leaders of America for the last 50 years. Why? Because Joseph Stalin built walls. Joseph Stalin kept people out of the country, right? That kind of idea. Now, he built walls and stuff to keep people in the country. I don't really think the Berlin Wall was like to keep the Mexicans out, right? It was kind of to keep the East Germans in. Yeah. Literally becoming a communist to own the liberals. That's the alt-right's plan right now. That's the far-right's plan right now. Literally making out with communists and simping for communists to own the liberals. That's embarrassing. Imagine being this guy. Imagine being this guy's parents. They must be proud, bro. They must be proud. Unbelievable. So I want you guys to recognize, this is a fifth column here. This guy lives with us. This guy lives amongst us. He's your enemy. He's not your friend. He's not somebody that you mean like, oh, he's just, we disagree or whatever. No, I want you to understand. They're pointing 300 nukes at us. They seek to take over the world in time. They want to bury us. They want to destroy our way of life. They're already doing it. They're already setting up their Confucius institutes throughout Australia, Canada, United States, etc., to try to indoctrinate young minds into Chinese communism. They are trying to destroy our way of life. They are trying to destroy our freedom. And they're willing to raise our cities with nuclear weapons to do it. And this guy sides with them. So he ain't your friend. He ain't your friend. You could say, oh, this is just one random dude who probably lives in like some random town somewhere. No, there are a lot of people out there that think like this. If you're at university right now, you know people who think like this. Understand, they don't just disagree with you. They're on the side of the enemy. We're in a Cold War. They are as detrimental to our society. They are as, dead weight to our society as the communist sympathizers were during the Cold War. These people, like I said here, you used to get hung for this kind of thing, right? So we've talked about it on the show before. I mean, you can make a very good case that we should bring back the sedition laws, that you can't just promote the interest of the enemy on Twitter or whatever, that you can't just go out and sing the praises of a country that's trying to bury you. We have this happen with North Korea all the time. The Libertarian Party has done it. The Green Party's done it. They do it with Russia, that kind of thing. Kind of a problem. Now you can make an argument about free speech and everything, but I mean, I'm saying I think that there's a good debate to be had about bringing back the sedition and espionage laws, right? So that we can actually do something about these kinds of people, because we're at a disadvantage in a democracy. They have an advantage over us because they control the narrative in their own countries. Whereas for us right now, we're losing the information war. They're sneaking their memes and their talking points and brainwashing our youth and our people online. And we can't do the same to them because they control their own internet. At some point, this is what Machiavelli talked about, in a time of crisis, if a democracy is incapable of thinking like a dictatorship, it will fall and it will never be a democracy because it will be defeated. And, and he said, if you're a dictatorship, you also have to be able to think like a democracy in a time of crisis. Otherwise, you'll also fall. But it's when I see stuff like this, you know, I'm not even necessarily saying that the government should do something. I just want to be clear here. I don't think that the government should even have to do something. I'm what I'm trying to do is change the culture. I want it to be so socially ostracizing and shameful for you to embrace the talking points of the enemy that the government doesn't even need to do anything about it. Like imagine in the 1950s. Let's say that for a minute that the government would just let you be a communist or whatever, right? You can totally you can say communist stuff. You can say the Soviets are awesome. You can say, oh yeah, Khrushchev should totally bury us. You could say that Khrushchev should bury us. I hope that Khrushchev nukes all of our cities. You can live in New York and you can say, I hope that Khrushchev drops 50 atomic bombs on New York tomorrow. You can say that, and the government won't do anything. My hope would be that we'd have a smart enough culture that you're not getting a job, nobody's going to like you, and you have to watch over your shoulder every time you go outside. That would be a smart society, right? Where, again, I'm not even saying like, oh, the government should do something about this. Because if the government has to do something, there's a problem. You would expect to have a citizenry that's patriotic enough that wants nothing to do with these kinds of people, that we can make it so that anybody that might even be thinking this kind of thing won't be dumb enough to say it in public. And we can finally get back to a point in our culture where we support and sympathize with our side, our government, support our institutions, support our intelligence agencies, support our interests, support our troops, support our ideology, support our leaders, not the leaders, not the comrades in Beijing like this guy wants to do. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it turns out this guy is a communist and he's begging communist China to liberate us. But most of what I've seen online are actually right-wingers, far right-wingers, alt-right wingers, not people like me, not people like Wyatt. Just they would take communism if it means more white babies. Again, like I said, I thought the whole point of the whole my birth rates thing was so that we can be stronger. These guys want to preemptively surrender. So it's not about strength. It's not about strength. It's just about my white babies. What does that even matter? What does that even matter? And again, like I said, that wouldn't even happen because he's so deluded. He doesn't understand the communist regime over there prioritizes male Han babies. They do forced abortions. What, you think they're not going to do forced abortions against white babies? They want strong Han babies. They don't want degenerate white babies. Oh, they're so deluded, dude. They're so freaking deluded. You know, I went to school with people that believe this kind of crap. Now, again, I don't even think it should have to come to the McCarthy thing. I joke about the McCarthy stuff, like, you know, where's Joe McCarthy when you need him? But again, I would hope that we wouldn't need to have congressional hearings on anti-American activities, that we would just have a culture that would know that if somebody says something like America deserved 9/11, or I hope the communists come in and invade us, you would know that those people aren't to be engaged with, that those people aren't to be hired, that they aren't to be in any way interacted with, right? That if you hang out with those people, people are going to think that you might be a communist, that kind of idea, right? That there used to be culture around that. And I've said that to people before, and people said, yeah, but that's because like the Soviets were like threatening to destroy America with nukes. What do you think China's doing? Like, do you think that the Chinese nuclear weapons are for decoration? No, they exist so that they can nuke America and our allies. Just the irony of this guy saying, please liberate us. He's tweeting this. He's almost certainly tweeting this from within the blast radius of one of their targets. That's the most cucked thing I've ever seen. What do you think liberate us means? It means they drop a bunch of nukes on you, dude. And there's a moderate chance that he lives close enough to the burst points that he wouldn't even have the time to realize the errors of his ways when the flash goes off. That he would just be rendered a shadow on the cement, right? Or glassed. Embarrassing. I know, like, he's not using his real identity and everything out there, but there are people who do. Again, this is symptomatic of a culture that's lost its values, lost its direction, has become, awash in moral relativism, cultural relativism, devil's advocacy, always rooting for the underdog to spite ourselves. Oh, because we want China to be stronger than us, I guess. So let's root for the underdog. We're more powerful than them. Let's root for them. Yeah. How about you do that in sports? And when it comes to politics and geopolitics, you root for your side because it's literally a matter of life and death. Please liberate us. When I see these kinds of tweets, I go back and I think, imagine that this was 1943 or 1944 in London, and you had a British person, a Londoner, saying, oh man, I heard the Germans, they're developing these cool new V2 rockets. I really hope it works out for them. I really hope, they've been on the losing side of the war and stuff. I really hope they get those V2 rockets going because, I root for the underdog, bro. Imagine what people would say. They're like, what do you think they're going to use those rockets for? They're going to bomb your house with them, dumbass. Just imagine somebody during the Blitz, when London was bombed ad nauseum, rooting for the freaking Germans, what they would have done with them. No, it wouldn't even happen. Nobody rooted for the Germans. No British person rooted for the Germans, and no Germans rooted for the British people. That wasn't a thing that happened. This is such a new phenomenon that you root for the enemy. It just shows you how detached from the consequences of the world we've become. Because you used to understand, well, if they win, you're either dead, in prison, or enslaved, right? So everybody rooted for their own side. Now? Oh, what? Oh, nukes. That's like a Cold War thing, bro. Or like they're far away, or well, they like the birth rates, bro. All this kind of crap. It honestly shouldn't even matter their ideology. Like it shouldn't matter if they're communist or fascist or whatever. Let's say that they were like a capitalist system and they had all these nukes and they were threatening us with them and they were propping up North Korea. Like, let's say that they were actually capitalist, but they were still opposed to us. It still wouldn't make sense to root for them. I'll be taking a look at the chat shortly. I just have a lot to say about this sort of thing. But again, imagine unironically hoping to be liberated by communists. What the implications of that actually are. Imagine what the people of West Germany would have thought of this. Imagine what the people of East Germany would have thought of this. Imagine what the people who actually had to live under communism would think of this. Imagine what the people in Hong Kong right now or Belarus right now would think of this. Imagine what the people of Georgia would think of this. Imagine what the people of Ukraine would think of this. 10 million Ukrainians were killed in less than 2 years by the communists in the Holodomor. 10 million. That's almost as much as the Holocaust in 2 years. And nobody ever talks about it. Oh, because that was left wing, bro. $100 million people killed in communist China since 1949. Imagine what they would think of this. They'd be rolling over in their graves, right? Except they don't have graves because they were just left to starve and die in the streets. Because that's how communist starvation and famine works. 40 million people die in a couple years. What are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with the bodies? I I want to say I hope this guy visits China. I really do hope this guy visits China, and I hope they arrest him because they need some Westerner to like do a trade off with to like get some asset from here. I hope this guy gets to experience Chinese prison at some point. I hope this guy gets to experience what it's like to actually deal with the consequences of the side that he's rooting for. And he can say to the police, "Hey, yo, you can't arrest me. I'm on your side. I rooted for you. I tweeted stuff for you." And they're like, "You're a spy, bro." They did worse in Russia. All those Italians and French and British quote unquote intellectuals, that the snobby cafe types that were like, "Oh, we need the revolution, bro," and all that. The hipster type people that went over to the Soviet Union to build communism with Comrade Stalin. What did Comrade Stalin do to them? They arrived, they were detained, they were all taken and put up against walls and shot. Why? Because he's like, "How do I know you guys aren't spies?" That's how communists treat their sympathizers. They call them useful idiots. They're useful in the West, and if they actually defect to you, you shoot them because they might be a spy. Kim Philby did more for the communists than anybody, potentially. I mean, almost anybody. I mean, Klaus Fuchs did a lot and everything too, but Kim Philby passed nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union for 30 years, man. Decades. He gave them the most valuable secrets in the universe. And you know how they treated him when he finally was like, "Oh man, I got to defect. I'm worried that MI6 is on to me. I need to get out of here." And he went to Moscow. You know how the Soviets repaid him for his decades of loyalty and invaluable, priceless secrets that he leaked from the British nuclear program to the freaking Soviets. He sold out his country. And you know what he was rewarded with for all the risk and everything? He was put under house arrest, essentially, for the rest of his life. Because they're like, "How do we know you're not a freaking spy? You were willing to sell your own country. How do we know you're not a double agent and you're going to sell us out?" They're like, "Look, we like what you did. We appreciate it. We're not going to execute you. But like, you also can't really go anywhere or anything, bro. So like, here's a tiny apartment in Moscow. And, you're not under house arrest. It's just if you leave, you can't really leave, bro." That's basically how they treated him. That was the most valuable asset they had. And that's how the communists treated him. How do you think this guy would be received? He didn't give them nuclear secrets. You think they treat him anywhere near as well as they treat Kim Philby? And Kim Philby was treated like shit? Why would you sympathize with the freaking communists? Anyway, so we'll take a look at the chat, but before we get into the chat, I do want to just prove to you what I was saying earlier about Nazbol Nick Fuentes. Because you're saying, "Oh, he's super alt-right." What do you mean he would choose communism? What do you mean he would choose Stalin over Trump? No, I have the quote. I literally have the clip right here. If you don't believe me, this is the clip. Now, this is deleted, but you know that this was his genuine feelings. The man's more sympathetic to communism than the Trump administration. It's embarrassing. Let's take a look. We're back under this brand. Here we are.
And so I hear people talking all the time about socialism is the biggest threat to our country. America will never be a socialist nation. America will never fall to communism. You know what? I would any day of the fucking week have America become a communist country, full-on Stalinism, than what we're doing right now, or what we've been doing for the past 50 years. Sorry for the language, but seriously, I would rather have Bernie Sanders be president for 1,000 years if we cannot be doing what we're doing right now with immigration.
Yeah. Again, I thought that the whole point of like the birth rates was so that we could be stronger or whatever. Apparently not. Apparently we can just surrender and defeat and do away with our civilization and just become communists if it means more white babies. All they care about is the white babies. That's the only thing that they care about. They're literally willing to live under communism if it means they get to have some white babies. That's the most pathetic thing. That's completely embarrassing. Just imagine what like MacArthur and Patton and Churchill and LeMay and Thomas Power and all of the great generals and military leaders of Western history of the last 100 years, what they would have thought. Imagine what Ronald Reagan would think of this. Yeah. We'll take a look at the chat. We'll take a look at the chat. We got Jay here. We got some other Hawks in the chat tonight. Kirk Wilcox was here. He said, big yikes, right when we began. Begging communist country to, quote, please liberate us, unquote, used to be reserved to the craziest commies in America. Now such sentiment has spread to the alleged, quote, America first, unquote, groypers. What a surprise. Oh, yeah, they call themselves America first. What about this? Begging to be liberated by communists? By the way, that means a war against America that he's rooting for their side on. What about that as America first? It seems more like they want America to get vaporized. Embarrassing. Jay says, good morning. Yeah, the CCP virus, communist virus. Yeah, please liberate us. Get out of here, you privileged moron. He really should move to China. That's that cool computer right there. Cool pooter. Yeah, Joe McCarthy is the most based of all based. Jay says he just tweeted me a meme about McCarthy. I'll have to take a look at it. I'm just checking my Twitter right now. Oh, no, this one's MacArthur. It was either McCarthy or MacArthur, but the one that he sent me is of Douglas MacArthur. This one's pretty good. It's pretty good, though there is a typo in it. There is a historical error. MacArthur didn't actually want to use 5 nukes against Korea during the Korean War. He actually wanted to use 60 nukes. So we'll take a look at the meme. This is what Jay said. Rare footage of General MacArthur explaining why he needs 5 nukes to win the Korean War. And we'll remove the banner momentarily. Why? Because fuck him. That's why. Yeah, no, he didn't want to use 5 nukes against Korea. That's not true. He wanted to use 60 nukes against North Korea. He wanted to assault the Yalu River and hit their bases in Manchuria, the communist bases in Manchuria that the Soviets were basing their air force in to shoot down American pilots. Sock on Brain says, under FIPA, Canada is required to compensate Chinese companies for damages caused by COVID. Yeah, I heard about this today. That is the most cucked thing possible. And Trudeau's going to happily pay them. He's going to get on his knees and everything and be like, here's your money, communist overlords. It's embarrassing. Imagine we did that with the Soviet Union. Sock on Brain thinks that the guy earlier was probably Nazbol. Yeah, probably. One of the primary reasons the Germans developed the first ICBMs was to destroy America, Project America. I don't really think they ever really got to the ICBM stage, though, right? Like, it wasn't until far later that, Wernher von Braun and some other Nazi scientists that became Americans, they developed the ICBMs for America. And, of course, Sergei Pavlovich Korolev, he's the one who did the ICBM program with the R-7 for the Soviets. And, of course, they had Nazi scientists there, but they didn't get the good ones. The good ones defected to America over the Soviets because, of course, they would. Like, if you had to choose. And let's play a thought experiment. Imagine that you're a Nazi scientist. So you're a hot commodity in 1945. The Reich is going down. You have to sneak towards one side of the country to be liberated by one set of troops. Do you risk your life to be liberated by the Red Army, or do you risk your life to be liberated by the Americans? Who would you pick? Because von Braun, all those guys, they picked America, and the other ones, they they didn't exactly pick the Soviets. They kind of just didn't get out of the country in time and found themselves on the red side of the curtain, right? So, yeah. Yeah, this idea that we want to be liberated by communists is the goofiest thing possible. Again, this is a regime that's killed 100 million of their own people. Their own people. Now imagine what they would do to their colonies. Imagine being a colony of that. They treat their own people like shit. Now imagine being second-class citizens in their empire. What that would be like. It's the most pathetic, cucked bullshit around, man. Natalie's here. It says, hey, all. Yeah, the people who used to live under communism are the most opposed to it. Yeah, that's true. They've seen what it's like firsthand. It's like why everybody that defected from Cuba, not really a fan of Bernie Sanders. So, yeah, somehow this just reminded me that Bernie didn't win a single county in Florida. Yep, I wonder why, right? Cool Pooter says, Nick Fuentes should be deported to communist China. Yeah. Nazbol's Law. We got Maximus the Great here tonight. Soccer Brain says, imagine if we sided with the Axis instead of the Allies, the Germans would have eventually gained ICBM capability and America would be destroyed. Yeah, well, the Soviets did get ICBM capability and almost destroy the US too. So, I mean, you're kind of screwed either way in that case. My view of it is you ally with Stalin after Hitler invaded, and then right after the war is over in Europe, you deal with Japan, you clean up that situation, and then you get right to work enriching as much uranium and getting the plutonium and stuff together as you possibly can. And you build a couple hundred plutonium bombs, and you deal with the Soviets. It would be the last nuclear war in history. It would be the last war in history, probably, or at least one of the last wars in history. I mean, just imagine how wealthy and beautiful and free and awesome the world would be today if America nuked the shit out of the Soviet Union in like 1946, 1947, just absolutely destroyed the communist bloc. And just imagine in 6 to 10 hours, you wipe out communism forever. It's done. You hit all their industrial centers, you hit all their big bases, and then you wipe them up with conventional forces afterwards. They wouldn't be able to rebuild. They wouldn't be able to make any new tanks or anything. You would hit all their factories, right? Just imagine what the world would look like today. Because communist China never would have been a thing. They happened in 1949 with Soviet assistance. The Korean War never would have happened. The communists went in there in 1948, right? In terms of how that was split up and whatnot, and in terms of the post-war era, and North Korea was founded. We take for granted how horrible the last 50 years have been, 70 years, I guess. We take for granted how we live in a world where we've got a bunch of countries aiming nukes at us and stuff. Now, just imagine America was the only country that ever got nukes, used them, and then made it clear that if anybody else ever tried to get nukes, they would nuke them. We would have the most peaceful world right now. Everybody would be rich. The Soviet Union would never be a thing anymore. Everywhere would just be an American-style democracy. And anybody that resisted would be wiped off the map. It would just be, for the rest of time, the rest of history, for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, it would just be America. Millions of years, it would just be America. There'd be no more gulags, no more communism, no more starvation, no more fascism. Just be one global superpower, a democratic order, human rights, capitalism everywhere. It would be amazing. The whole world would look like Florida and Montana and California and Texas. Everywhere. North Korea would, it looked like a typical, American countryside and whatnot. No gulags, no terror, no disappearing in the middle of the night. There'd be no nuclear threats ever again to any of us. All of that. And all that Truman or Eisenhower had to do was just drop a couple hundred bombs. That's it. And then it's done. It's done. You never have to fight a big war again. You own the world forevermore. Like, I can tell you this. If I was in Truman's shoes, or even if I was in Eisenhower's shoes, right? Oh, man, it would have been, like, I'm not going to say I would have done it right away. I would have saved up to get enough bombs. But, I mean, they went from having basically zero in August of 1945 to having a couple thousand by the early 1950s. You don't have to wait that long. It doesn't take a couple thousand bombs to destroy the Soviet Union. A few hundred atomic bombs on the Soviet Union. Oh, it's over. It's over. They're done. Nobody's ever going to oppose America for the rest of history, because now nobody else can even get nukes. Because if anybody tries, you take them out. And it's clear. So they know that. They're not even going to try to do it. You'd have the democratic peace forever. It would be the sort of thing that, I mean, just imagine how different the world would look today. And people talk about it as if, like, oh man, that's crazy. Can you imagine that almost happened? And I'm like, what's crazy is not nuking the Soviets, waiting for them to get 40,000 nukes by the 80s, and then risking a global nuclear war with them when they would actually win. That's embarrassing. That's ridiculous. 100 million people were killed in communist China between 1949 and today as a result of communism in the country. All of those lives would have been saved if we had just nuked the shit out of the Soviet Union in the late 1940s. They would have had no satellites, no puppets. China never would have been communist. Korea never would have been communist. Vietnam never would have been communist. Imagine how many lives would have been saved. Sure, you might kill 50 or 60 million people in the Soviet Union in the nuclear attack, but then you save 100 million people in China. You save millions of people in Korea. You save your own troops. You save your own country. 60 million people dying in a nuclear strike to never have to fight a war again for the rest of time, to have the world and to forge the world in your image. Anybody who wouldn't take that deal is actually the murderous person, because now imagine how many people are going to die over the next 1,000 years of wars and conflict and strife, of a world that's divided, in a world that is separated between islands of freedom and continents of slavery. And we had the opportunity. They didn't even have a single nuclear weapon. They had nothing to fire back with. There was a time when America could drop 500 nuclear bombs on the Soviet Union, and the Soviets couldn't do anything about it. That's insane that Truman didn't take the opportunity. And I like Truman. I've said, like, you know, I give credit to Truman for taking out Japan and not actually invading Japan and seeing 1 million American troops die. He at least had the courage to use the nuclear weapons to end the war. But he could have ended wars forever if he had used them later on and just nuked the Soviet Union. It would have been the end of war for the rest of the time, right? We'd have peace forever. Think about that. We'd just taken one small nuclear war, a few hundred nuclear bombs. They would have been done forever, right? They'd be an American state today, basically, the Russians. China would be capitalist. Everybody would be capitalist. Everybody would be free. Everybody would be happy. One nuclear war. That's all it would have taken. And it wouldn't even be really a war. They wouldn't be able to fire nukes back. It would be one-sided. And America would have monopoly on nukes forever going forward. Like Operation Unthinkable. The only thing that's unthinkable is not doing it. Anyway, so we'll take a look at the chat a bit more. Yeah, Maximus says Operation Unthinkable should have been initiated. Yeah, no, I'll have to do a video series on that at some point, you know? I mean, that will be remembered in the history books for all time, is probably the biggest blunder in geopolitical history. Having a monopoly on nukes, having hundreds of nukes, knowing that the Soviets are going to get nukes, but not taking the shot to destroy them when you had the means to do it, and not have to deal with any retaliation, that was the biggest fuck up in American history. Probably in the history of our civilization. Because what do we have to deal with? The consequences of it. 70 years of the communists trying to bury us. Proxy wars, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, mass starvation, communism in China, North Korea, the new North Korean nuclear crisis, so on and so forth. Nuclear proliferation throughout the world. Iran's trying to get nukes. All these countries, Pakistan's got nukes. No, if you did Operation Unthinkable, nobody ever would have got nukes again after that, because they would have known, oh man, America's going to level us if we even try. It would just be a unipolar world. It would literally be an American-dominated world for 100 billion years, you know? I mean, the next enemies, the next war would be fought when we encounter aliens. That's how peaceful the world would be for the ages, the eons. One nuclear war, one small nuclear war, a few hundred bombs. And what happened by not doing that? We got to a point where the Soviets had 40,000 and America had 25,000. If a war broke out then, the Soviets might have won, right? So that's a problem. That's a problem. And it's not even the sort of thing that you can even learn your lesson from, because when are we ever going to have that shot again? All these countries have nukes now. It's ridiculous. Nuclear proliferation could have just been nipped in the bud right there, you know, and you would have had a peace that comes out of that where you get total and unconditional surrender from the communists, and you have a new peace, you know, an update to the Westphalian understanding. You have like a Treaty of Washington or something where you say, here's the new social contract in the world. America is the only country that gets nukes. And if you break that rule, you get nuked. That kind of idea, right? I'm telling you, man, there never would have been wars again. Like, there would have been small scale wars. The biggest thing that you'd ever have to deal with for the rest of time, unless we meet aliens, is like rogue terrorists and stuff. But we have to deal with them now anyway, and we have to deal with the Russians having nukes, and the Chinese, and the North Koreans, and the Pakistanis, and the Iranians are trying to get it. Dude, it's a shit show. And it's only going to get worse. And all this could have been averted if you just nuked the Soviet Union in the 1940s. Never have to deal with wars ever again. Forever. One nuclear war and it's over. And they wouldn't even have one nuke to fire back at you. That's the beauty of it. They didn't even have one nuke. In 1948, they didn't even have one. They didn't have a nuke until August of 1949. America had hundreds. It was the biggest blunder, the biggest missed opportunity that, I mean, if we survive as a species, that's going to be remembered as the biggest blunder for all time, right? I mean, you had the opportunity to really take over the world and you blew it. And instead we got wars for thousands of years instead, you know? Strife, hardship, starvation, communism, fascism, etc. We could have had a global democracy. We could have had global capitalism. That war would have been over in weeks. Like the first day, 300 nukes go off. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? What, they're going to build tanks to fight you? They've got no factories. You nuke all their cities. They got nothing. No, they would have been over. They would have surrendered so fast, too. Ridiculous. And like I said, you can't even really learn a lesson from that because we don't live in that world anymore. That was a short window of opportunity to bring about world peace forever. And Truman, Eisenhower, they blew it. They totally blew it, dude. They totally blew it. And you can say, well, with Eisenhower, the Soviets did have some nukes. Yeah. In the initial days, they had some. They had some. They didn't even really have the delivery mechanisms to get those to the U.S. mainland. The retaliation would have been limited in the theater scope. No, you have windows of opportunity. And those windows close. And they closed on us. And that's sad. and there's nothing we can do about it. But, there is one lesson that we can take from that, and that's to say, let's not make the same mistake with North Korea. I'm not going to get into that anymore because I am still going to have the debate with Dylan Burns where I'm going to be arguing for a strike against North Korea. I'm not going into my strategy or anything. I know he might be watching this. I don't really feel like broadcasting my tactics to my opponent. I'm not really about that. I'm not Liz. I'm not going to do a prep stream where I just go over my documents and everything and my arguments and my supporting side while he's watching. That's literally what she did, and I watched her stream because of course I was going to. What a fool. What a fool. We had the tweet from Dylan Burns. This was from yesterday. Just went through a breakup. All streams canceled until further notice. So obviously the debate is postponed. I don't know when we're going to be doing the debate. I guess it's kind of a running theme. People were memeing about it being a running theme. How the debates get postponed, right? No, I believe him. It's just, it's an unforeseen circumstance that got in the way, but it's unfortunate. I'm looking forward to the debate. I don't think the debate's going to go well for him, by the way. So Cuba versus Russia. They would have a war over who gets to take Nick. Loser has to take Nick Fuentes. Oh, man. Kamaljeet says, if Truman could bomb Japan, he should have had no problem with bombing Russia. I know. I mean, the argument that was given was that the population was war-weary, which makes sense. It's just now you have to deal with wars between nuclear states and stuff forever. Like, it just seemed like, just have a short World War III, you win, they don't have any nukes to hit you back with, then you go in with your conventional forces. Like, again, I want to make this very clear. If America dropped 300 or 400 nuclear bombs on the Soviet Union in, 1948 or whatever, or even 1950, even after they had a few crude atomic bombs, let's say that Eisenhower dropped, let's say that he waited until 1952 and he decided that he was going to drop 1,500 nuclear bombs on the Soviet Union. The Soviets at most probably would have had about 100 bombs to retaliate with at that point, and they weren't getting those to U.S. cities. They didn't really have much of the means to do so. And they're going to send them up in bombers that aren't really even completely through the testing yet? They would have gotten shot down. No, they're going to be theater limited. They're going to be used in tactical context on the battlefield. That would have been a victory for the West. It would have been a victory for the West. You might say, oh, what about the radiation? The radiation would last a long time. Yeah, well, not as bad as if we wait for them to get 40,000 nukes and then a nuclear war breaks out. I mean, right now, we're in a situation with Russia where a hell of a lot more nukes than that would go off if there was a war. And so then your radiation argument is out the window because now we're in a situation where it would be far worse, obviously. What you think was going to happen? You wait. What, you think they're just going to disappear? That's like a 4-year-old idea. Like if I close my eyes and pretend I can't see my parents, then maybe my parents can't see me. Maybe my parents just disappear, bro. That's that attitude. Now, how about this? If we pretend they don't exist, they still exist and they still enrich uranium and they still work on their designs and they still do testing. So how about you wipe them out and then we get world peace as opposed to waiting and doing the Neville Chamberlain on them. The Neville Chamberlain treatment doesn't really work out. You appease a dictator an inch, he takes a mile. You appease him a further inch, he takes 1,000 miles. This idea that, oh, well, a nuclear war would be bad. Therefore, let's wait for the Soviets to get 40,000 nukes, and then maybe a nuclear war happens. That's the dumbest logic. And we're doing it with North Korea. We're doing it with North Korea right now. They're in their early stages. What? We think they're not going to get more? I'll save it. I'll save it for the debate. Y'all got to watch the debate when it happens. I don't know when it's going to happen. It might be a while. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and like dunk on Burns or anything. I imagine he's going through a hard time right now. You know, he's like 19 years old. I had a really rough breakup when I was like 18. I can't imagine being a public figure back then, right? Obviously, I wouldn't be able to do streams and stuff. It really knocks you down, right? But he accused me of stalling, man. He accused me of stalling. He accused me of stalling. I'm going to see if I can find the tweet. No, that's not the one. Where is it? I might have gotten rid of it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got rid of that one. Yeah, those are just the Ian Stevens ones. Yeah, so I got rid of those tweets, but just to clear out room here. Now, he accused me of stalling. So, like I said, like I'm not gonna be an asshole or anything about this. I think that he's not backing out. I think that this genuinely happened and whatnot. But like, all I'm gonna say is if I hear any more bullshit about me stalling, yeah, then he's gonna be hashtag breakup boy, right? Like that was the memes. That was the memes in the chat when I saw it. When I looked in the chat, they're like, "Oh, so it's school computer and breakup boy," and I'm like, no, I believe him. Like, let's not go there. Let's not go there. He's going through a rough time. It happens to all of us, right? And Reese is like, oh, you know, good guy Kevin, this sort of thing or whatever. Yeah, but I'm not going to be good guy Kevin if he accuses me of stalling again. I just want to make that very clear right here. If he does the stalling thing after this, he's hashtag breakup boy, right? We're going to change our names to Twitter to like hashtag breakup computer, that kind of stuff, right? It's going to be meta. We're going to have meta memes parodying the both of them, him and Ian Stevens. I never stalled. We both put this on the back burner. We're both busy. He streams all the time. I stream all the time. It's what we do. Huh. So that's the deal right there. If anybody else has any final comments or anything, feel free to put them in the chat right now. I'll take a look. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up. Always good talking with you guys. It's good to talk with people and see people in the chat that get what I'm saying, that aren't just total brainlets. Like, oh, the China's the good guys, and like, oh, you know, Truman was a war criminal, that kind of thing. Like, a cool computer. He does like the Mawabawushin, bro, and my war criminal, my more crimes, that kind of thing. Like the brainlets speak, right? Cool Pooter says, I ship Kremlin Kyle and Nazbol Nick to be the cutest couple to simp for communist regimes. You know what? I know I said we're going to wrap up the stream. We are going to wrap up the stream soon, but it'd be kind of cool to talk with Cool Pooter tonight. So I'm going to send him an invite if he wants to come on, if he's even still awake. We'll send him an invite. I'll send Jay an invite, and I'll send Reese an invite, and we'll see if any of these guys can actually come on. So if they can't, then we'll wrap it up. If they can, then we'll go a little bit longer. So yeah, no, Cool Pooter's here. He says, war criminal. Yeah, that's what they all do. They're like, Bush was a war criminal. They're calling Kamala Harris a war criminal on Twitter. How is Kamala Harris a war criminal? Like, I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris. Oh, but she criticized Tulsi Gabbard. She criticized Tanky Tulsi. War criminal. Everything's a freaking war crime. This stream is a war crime. Everything's a war crime with these people. Oh, you support America? That's a war crime. It's so goofy. It's so goofy. Maximus says, good night, everyone. Nice talking to you. Well, nice having you in the chat, Max. We got, oh, he says, well, let's see. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll stick around and see if we get some Hawks in the chat. Kevin's ears are a war crime. Yeah, ears bad. Ears bad. Kamal Jeet Ram says, yeah, learned about Chamberlain in 10th grade. My teacher said it was equivalent of a kid throwing a temper tantrum, and the parents let the kid have the tantrum, or was it a candy bar? Well, that's interesting that your teacher was actually critical of Neville Chamberlain, because a lot of teachers, they'll be, I guess, critical of Chamberlain and say, oh, it exacerbated and made the problem with Hitler worse. They'll never then understand that the Iraq War then was good, or that getting tough on North Korea is good, or getting tough on Iran is good. They're incapable of extending that logic past 1945, basically. It's embarrassing. Because if you can say to me, oh yeah, no, Chamberlain made a mistake, what you're saying is, therefore, we need neocons and hawks in power. But no, that would be war, and all those teachers are opposed to the Iraq War. But then they'll criticize Chamberlain. No. If we were back then, they would support Chamberlain. They would say that I'm a war criminal for saying that Hitler needs to be dealt with. Right? I'm sick of this idea that we're going to have a different logic for something because it's in the past and because everybody agrees Hitler was bad, therefore going to war with Hitler was good. But then if we have a real life modern day Hitler like Saddam Hussein or Kim Jong-il or Kim Jong-un, can't do anything about them. That would be war, and war is bad. And Bush was worse than Saddam, bro. And Cheney was worse than Saddam, bro. Like Saddam, he just wanted to gas Kurdish kids in peace, bro. Assad, he just wanted to gas Syrian kids in peace, bro. Just leave him be. Just don't be a warmonger. Let him gas kids on his own. It's his sovereignty, bro. Anyone who disagrees with Saint Tulsi is a war criminal. That's Max right there. Yep. Yeah, she's a saint to them. It's pathetic. SP Broadcraft with the ears says they usually bring up Kamala's time as criminal prosecutor, particularly the case of Kevin Cooper and the Chino Hills massacre. Oh, yeah, they call her Cop Mala. They say Kamala is a cop. I'm like, oh, so you're making Kamala sound awesome. I don't even like Kamala. But if you're going to brand her as a cop, you're by definition making her sound cool. I think she's cringy. I think she's basically like an SJW. But you're going to say, oh, she's a cop. That's like saying that somebody's a troop. It's like that makes them sound base. That makes them sound epic. Like they make Kamala Harris sound way more awesome than she actually is. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have anybody rolling up here tonight. It is pretty late. People are probably in bed, right? So, but I'll be back here tomorrow. There's a lot to talk about. The election's coming up soon, and we'll be live streaming the election, of course. So that'll be fun. Going to be streaming a long time that day. I got that booked off from work, so it's going to be an awesome stream. Hey, Wakanda is a better name because she's woke. Oh, man. Yeah, that's kind of spicy. Broadcraft says Kamala has unfortunately and predictably backtracked on Kevin Cooper, saying he should get a third DNA test. Well, she has to appease the aggressive gremlins and the brainlet brigades, right? So, and honestly, so does Joe Biden, and it sucks because Joe Biden, he posted cringe recently on Twitter, and we're going to probably talk about it tomorrow. He should not be appeasing the progressives. Now, he has done some good work in terms of, considering some Republicans actually in his cabinet. He should not listen to the progressives on this. Kamal Jeet Ram says, I followed Dylan. He hasn't posted anything about you. Well, thanks for the update. That's good. I haven't actually taken a look at his Twitter today. I'll take a look at it. I don't follow him, by the way. By the way, I'm very, very, very sparse in terms of my following. I don't follow people. You really have to earn a follow from me. Like if I follow somebody, that's an event, right? And sometimes I'll often even post, like, I'm now following this person, you should too, because I hardly ever follow people, right? So, yeah, no, he hasn't really followed it or posted very much. So, nothing today. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So he needs some time to, get back to his normal self. That's cool. We'll give him time, right? So SP Broadcraft says that man is 100% guilty. Devin Tracy, the Roo, Fear the Roo, he says had made a video series on the Chino Hills Massacre. Defending a child murderer is unbelievably low for Kamala. Yeah, well, it's Kamala Harris, right? That's why I say, like, this idea Kamala is a cop and all this kind of stuff, they make her sound way more cool than she actually is. Like, I wish that she was out there being like, I'm a cop. You should vote for me. We're going to get tough on crime. Vote Joe Biden, Kamala Harris 2020. Like, that'd be awesome. Like, can we please get Joe Biden of the 1990s back, when he wants to bomb Iran and he wants to get tough on crime and he understands that Iran is an absolute menace, murdering everybody in the region, right? And that they're a gross threat to Western interests, and that they're the largest state sponsor of terror in the world. Can we get that Joe Biden to be president? Can we get him in the White House? That'd be awesome. Tough on crime at home, tough on criminal regimes abroad. That's awesome. So he would destroy Trump. I still think he's probably going to win, and he very well might destroy Trump now, but it'd be way more cool if we got the 90s Joe Biden back. 90s Joe Biden was where it's at, so. Because he shouldn't be pandering to, like, the Young Turks and stuff. He doesn't need them, and they don't like him as it is, so. But yeah, I think we're going to wrap up the stream. So thanks for being here tonight, everybody. Appreciate your time watching this video. We had an active chat. It's always good to talk with the chat. Be sure to like this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, Superpower Broadcasting. Make sure that you're following over on Twitch. You can also check me out over on Facebook, except for whatever reason, I can't really share stuff over there anymore. I guess I posted too many mean things in the streams, so I guess they're shutting down my Facebook. I don't know. I don't really care. What else is there? Oh yeah, if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon. That's patreon.com/superpowerbroadcasting. But if you aren't able to actually do like a month-on-month commitment or anything, or a pledge, you can also just send me a tip over to my PayPal. Links in the description below. And a huge thanks to the PayPal gang. You guys have been awesome in offsetting the costs of all the new computer equipment and everything. My new school computer, right? So that I can debate Ian Stevens, who I guess he still needs his school computer as he tweets from his iPhone. We have one more question I'll get to. Well, two more comments. Kamal Jeet says, thank you. Biden needs to stop appeasing the woke. They will never be satisfied and they will ruin this country. Oh, yeah, they don't even like Biden. That's the other thing, is like, if he tries to appease them, they're just going to call him a fascist anyway. So, like, he should not care. Young Turks, all those people, they do not like Joe Biden. I don't understand that he's like going to go out of his way to try to appeal to them. They hate him. They're upset that he absolutely crushed Bernie and ruined their dreams. That's one of the reasons why I really like Joe Biden, is just how thoroughly he destroyed the Bernie bros. Like, even if you disagree with Biden, you have to give him credit. You have to give him credit. You have to say, dude, big up. You absolutely nuked the Bernie bros. They're still triggered. They're going to be triggered for decades. Joe Biden's going to be living rent-free in their heads for decades. He's like the new Dick Cheney to them, because he destroyed their reason for existence. Their whole thing is, you should have voted for us because we could have beat Trump. Well, apparently you can't even win a single county in Florida, and Joe Biden's going to beat Trump, and you guys are going to be completely irrelevant from now on. So Joe Biden should understand, look, they're a burden to the party. They're not an asset. And they don't even consider themselves Democrats. they call liberals and Democrats chuds and bourgeois and that kind of stuff, right? So SP Broadcraft asks, well, you ever try to get the Roo on a future live stream? Well, the Roo doesn't really do foreign policy. It's just not really something that he's into. He's more into like atheism and crime and that kind of stuff, which is cool. You know, I like Devin Tracy. Devin Tracy also got nuked from YouTube. He's over on censored.tv now with like Gavin McInnes and those guys. I don't think that this channel, look, he probably knows about this channel. I was like the most upvoted comment on some of his videos before he got shut down from YouTube. Like, you know, oh man, keep up the good work and all this kind of stuff and everything. And I would be like the most, upvoted comment, right? So he probably has heard of Superpower Broadcasting. And of course, you know, he streamed with Reese before, for example. He probably knows about me. I doubt he would spend his time going on a channel with like 370 subscribers. You guys are awesome, but like I might try to get him on the show when we've got like 20,000 or something, right? Because right now he probably wouldn't think it's necessarily worth his time. You don't know. You don't know. I think he went on Reese's show when Reese had a couple hundred subscribers, but Devin was also a lot smaller back then. Devin's basically a celebrity. I could try reaching out to him. I highly doubt he would have the time for it. So Terra Nova says they're calling her a cop in the sense that she's a snitch. Believe me, it's not a compliment. No, I know. It's just it makes her sound cool. I support the police, so like the Kamala Harris that they imagine is a way better Kamala Harris than the Kamala Harris that actually exists. So it's unfortunate. But that's the aggressive gremlins. That's the busters right there for you, the Bernie or busters. So we are going to wrap up the stream. Like I said, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. And if you want to support me, my Patreon and PayPal links are in the description below. Thanks for being here tonight. I'll be back here tomorrow, of course. Have a good evening, everybody.